here to change people's minds, not here to fix people. We're here to help people fight their own demons.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeff Haynes and I'm the Senior Editor of Video Games at Common Sense Media. I'm here today with a quick look at Psychonauts 2, which is an action-adventure game that came out on August 25th, 2021 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Windows PCs. Now this is a great action-adventure game that delves into a lot of very serious mental issues with a lot of humor but also gravity, and it's one of the reasons why we decided to give it a Common Sense selection for teens. And we'll go into that in a little bit. But right now we're going to get into a little bit of the narration from the main character named Rasputin, or Raz to his friends, who's kind of going over a lot of the events of how he became a psychonaut himself. In fact, Raz decided to run away from the circus, which is what he and his family had always basically been, a troupe of circus performers, so that he could fulfill his dream of becoming an international psychic spy, or psychonaut. And this happens to be his first day on the job. Now, it's also very notable that Psychonauts 2 is a title that took 16 years to make. There was a spin-off that was a VR title that was released a few years back, but in many ways, this is the long-awaited sequel, and it really does not disappoint, especially for action-adventure fans. Now, on Raz's first mission, he winds up going into the mind of a devious dentist known as Dr. Lovato, and as you can see in that corner, that is kind of the mental construct or mental personification of Dr. Lovato himself, and he's put himself into an office building situation. Of course, because he is kind of worried about what's going on, he's kind of throwing up his own defenses and mental blocks to prevent psychonauts and other intrusionary thoughts from preventing him from accomplishing his goals. Of course, a little bit earlier you kind of heard him say, "Are you following me?" So he kind of thinks that something might be going on, and in fact, as Raz turns the corner,
You are following
he
me.
hears, and you can hear that he says that he is being followed, so he does know something's going on. And that kind of gives up the ghost, but that also allows a certain amount of training for the player to kind of get their hands in on what exactly Raz will be able to do, whether it happens to be punching and kicking your way through different obstacles, using your psychic abilities, but also learning kind of the ropes of how to play this game. Now, as you can see right here, Dr. Lovato is not going to make it easy. In fact, because it is his mind, he's going to really complicate things. That also kind of brings up, in some ways, kind of the mental issue aspect, or some of the mental handling of some of the topics here. One of the things that's really notable and laudable about Psychonauts 2 is they really try to approach some of the mental issues that could possibly arise for anybody in a lighthearted and humorous way, while still also giving those issues weight. For instance, you're actually about to see right here that Raz and another Psychonaut agent, who happens to be known as the Coach, wind up discovering, as you see on screen, what they call a censor, which attacks thoughts that don't belong. Now, of course, everybody has a period where they think that they have a thought and it shouldn't really belong in their head. Everybody has doubts, everybody has fears or judgments or anything else. And in Psychonauts, you see that these thoughts, these issues, these negative emotions wind up becoming personified as you explore everybody's mind, trying to come up with a solution and uncover the mystery of what's going on. Now, as a Psychonaut, you actually have the ability to attack and defeat these thoughts, but it does raise a rather interesting aspect, which is that in some way that kind of gives you a sense not only of yourself and your self-worth, but also that you can defeat a lot of these negative emotions in your own life. In fact, the developers at Double Fine actually have a message on the menu of the game itself talking about how they try to handle a lot of the negative emotions. As you can see here, we have regret, and we've actually tried to capture some of these with, the censor there. There's this regret that weighs you down. In a few seconds, we're actually even going to show you doubts. So you get a sense of what these are, and they mentioned that they try to handle this in a lighthearted but serious way, but if you happen to have any issues, you should always look for and seek help in addressing these, and they even provide resources in how you can do that, which is very noteworthy. So we've moved on a little bit from some of the combat between the regrets and doubts to some of the Figment collection, as well as what they call emotional baggage. Of course, everybody might have emotional baggage for one thing or another. In Psychonauts 2, you have both the emotional baggage, but you can also collect tags to identify what that baggage might be, and if you collect enough of it, you wind up gaining ranks, which allows Raz to power up his mental abilities, allowing him to be more capable in combat and exploration situations. So we've skipped ahead a little bit now, and we've managed to get back to Psychonauts headquarters, or what they call the Motherlode. And Raz happens to be the newest agent, of course, but unfortunately for him, the woman on screen, who happens to be Director Hollis Forsyth, or the acting Psychonaut in charge, doesn't really recognize him. In fact, she's never seen him before, so she's not going to give him the same credentials and the same respect as the other Psychonauts who have been active members of the organization for a very long time. Unfortunately for our hero, that means that even though he has been on missions, he has performed admirably, and he has demonstrated that he has control of his own abilities, he's going to unfortunately wind up being demoted. This is okay, though, for players, because it allows us to get more of a sense of what we will actively be able to do. Again, this is another part of kind of the training or tutorial section where we'll be introduced to a number of our abilities and how that winds up factoring in over the course of this title. In fact, this is probably a good 40-50 hour title if you don't count the replayability or even the return to other areas so that you can fully explore everybody's mind and some of the environments to collect all of the collectibles. And there are a ton of collectibles that you can gather in this title. As you can see on screen right here, this is your welcome to the intern program with a field manual, and it gives you a sense of not only what your level happens to be, but also some of the resources that you've collected and gathered, which you'll be able to use to increase and augment Raz's powers, but also some of the unique items, some of the powers that you have, and what the various levels happen to be, and how you can rank those up so you know what you can save for and what those abilities will actively look like when they have been scaled up. You also get a sense of the areas that you visited and the places that you can return to visit to collect some of those other items. You get some hints on where you can go, as well as some of the critical missions, some of the side missions, some of the other things. There's a ton of content within Psychonauts 2, and it really is one of those things that you'll really love and want to explore every single nook and cranny just to find out exactly all the secrets that you have, especially when it comes to solving the mystery of what's going on within Psychonauts 2. So now that we've managed to clear what we've done with the intern registration, we're going to be taken to the lobby of the Motherlode. This acts as a hub for Psychonauts 2, and in many ways you're going to be moving in and out, even though Raz winds up arriving in the lobby in a very undignified way. As you can see, there's classrooms, there's agent offices, there's a cafeteria, there's a ton of places for you to explore, and over the course of the game, you will wind up going into all of these places. You'll also see some very odd characters like that brain and a hamster ball. Don't ask, there actually is a certain amount of context for that a little bit later on in the game, and everything will be fully explained, of course. But let's go a little bit farther, because as you can see on screen right here, this is the automatic vending machine. This winds up giving you a chance to augment and increase your abilities. You wind up collecting a lot of those cards, which you can then use to turn in and, again, rank up your stats and your abilities. At the vending machines, you can also get healing items like the mental pops, things, and the candies, which you can use to restore your mental energy or your health bar when you wind up being defeated. You can also gain pins, which you can use to augment the powers that you happen to have and the powers that you wind up collecting. And you'll collect 8 different powers over the course of the entire game as well. Now, as you can see right here, we've managed to collect enough cards, and they've even given us some free items so that we can rank up and that boosts our abilities. Unfortunately, everything isn't going to be that smooth for Raz. As you can see right here, we've met some of the other interns in the intern program, and this is where they're going to start engaging in a little bit of classroom bullying. That's okay, though, because when it really comes down to it, when Raz needs their help the most, these kids actually do come together and help Raz out in accomplishing a number of his missions. And that at least proves that while they may tease him, they may give him a hard time, they are actively willing to help him accomplish the goals for the greater good of not only the organization, but also to defeat the really bad guys. That actually brings me to a really notable point, which is some of the other content that you might find in the game. As I mentioned earlier, the game deals with mental illnesses in a very humorous but dignified manner. These personifications of these negative emotions and issues are shown. They don't display any blood or gore when they're defeated. They just disappear in clouds of smoke, but they do cry out. There are also some discussions of war and death and even raising the dead, which could be an issue, and there are some personifications of some phobias which could raise some red flags for some people. There are some dialogue elements with some innuendos that are used within some of the conversations. Players will also hear the word ass that has been used within a couple lines of the gameplay itself. And finally, some characters are seen smoking within the game. In fact, one of the characters, Sasha, frequently has a cigarette shown within his hand. So if you have any other questions about some of the content that might be included within the game, you can always check out our review on commonsensemedia.org, where we have a full breakdown of all of the pressure issues that might be within the game. So now that we've moved past some of the mean pranking that's gone on by the other interns, we can actually get back into a mission where Raz has managed to go into the mind of Director Forsyth in an attempt to change her mind so that he and the other interns can go on a mission. Now, as you can see before, he ran into what's called a half-a-mind pickup. And if you manage to collect 2 half-a-mind pickups, you get a full mind, which manages to extend your health bar, giving you more abilities and more health to sustain yourself when it comes to battle. They're not always going to be so very closely tied together in the same area or the same room, but that just gives you a sense, as you saw right there, how you can boost yourself and make yourself more capable when it comes to exploring all of these areas. Again, there are a lot of other figments of imagination. In this sense, it's more in a medical context because this entire stage is taking place inside of a hospital. And Raz is using a power that allows him to bounce in and out of thoughts, which can help him change or even manipulate the way that somebody's thinking. Really interesting ability. It also winds up giving him access to new areas, such as this corridor where you can see not only more figments, but also this memory vault. Memory vaults are really interesting because they give you more of a sense of some of the aspects of a person's psyche. So as you can see right here in this silent slideshow, you get a sense that Director Forsyth was working at a hospital and presented a method to one of her bosses, and he took the method and passed it off as his own. So she decided to figure out a way of coming up with some kind of revenge and get back at him in some way for taking her hard work. So there's more to that story, and of course over the course of the entire game you'll be able to explore not only everybody's individual stories that you go into when it comes to exploring their minds and their mental states, but you'll use those clues when it comes to figuring out the larger problem that exists within the game, which is that there happens to be, or there seems to be, a mole inside the Psychonauts organization that threatens to bring back a dangerous villain that the Psychonauts defeated years before and possibly will threaten the world once again. Now, as you can see right here, Raz is really getting more of a sense from Director Forsyth's mental construct about not only how she's worried about death and risk, but she's stressing about money and all these other things, and he's wondering that if he can possibly change or rearrange the thoughts that she's having, that, you know, she might be more willing to let people do things that they want or need to do for their careers. Unfortunately, Raz winds up changing just a little too much. He kind of doesn't exactly know where to stop, and as you can see, that hospital doesn't wind up being the same hospital that he was once in. In fact, it gets a little bit glitzier, a little bit flashier. It almost looks like a casino. And in some cases, that means that Raz is going to have to deal with the consequences of his mental actions or his mental changes. As you can see here, this new personification is a heavy sensor, which attempts to crush thoughts that don't belong, as opposed to the regular sensor. That, in combination with other creatures, as you see right here, that pop up, these bad idea creatures that kind of have ideas that blow up in somebody's face, represent a lot of the threats that you will have to face over the course of the game itself. And of course, using your mental abilities, using some of your powers, using the ability to punch and attack some of these enemies, you'll have to figure out a way of dealing with all of that. So we're coming up on the end of the video, but I wanted to show you how, of course, some of these environments wind up changing. As you can see here, this happens to be a maternity ward for the hospital, but it looks like a roulette wheel. As you can see, a lot of the environments have changed, and these will happen to change as you go in and out of everybody's mind that you wind up exploring for all the stages. Again, this is a very large game, easily a good 40 to 50 hours, not counting a lot of the replayability and the fact that you probably will need to play it at least 1 or 2 times to fully explore and acquire every single element of the game itself and fully understand the entire mystery of Psychonauts 2. So that's a really quick look at Psychonauts 2. Again, as I said, it came out on August 25th, 2021. For more top picks and advice to fit your family, be sure to always check out commonsensemedia.org.